Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, live on CBS Sports Network. Love to get you set for the weekend ahead with a little something we like to call Big Game Breakdown, and it don't get much bigger than when we get USC and Michigan clashing in the big house. You know, for programs that have, such clout within this sport, some of the most recognizable helmets that you've got in the entire country, they've only played 11 times in the history of their respective programs. 8 of those times have been in the Rose Bowl, so this is the first regular season meeting for USC and Michigan since 1958. But forget the history books. That's what they say about USC and Michigan's rivalry, right? Just throw out the record books. Let's talk about the matchup, Danny. When you're looking here at Sharon Moore naming Alex Orji as the starting quarterback after having to bench Davis Warren in that game against Arkansas State, what are you expecting from Michigan, and what does Michigan need to do to be able to find success when they've got the ball?
Well, I tell you what, I think it was a pretty easy decision for Sharon Moore. I mean, Davis Warren was handed the keys to this offense and couldn't drive the car and keep it between the lanes. I mean, 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. That'll get you benched almost any place out there. And he just struggled with ball security. I mean, that's the one thing a quarterback has to remember is you have to protect the football. And he was just too careless with it. But I think the benefit of this, there will be no question about the identity of this Michigan team, because I felt like this was a team that was searching for one. When Davis Warren was in there, we talked a lot about this. There were 2 different offenses. Well, we're going to be pro style, and we're going to drop back pass, and we're going to do play action pass. When Alex Orji would come in, a little bit more spread option style, and they would run him more. It was a little bit more situational. Now, unequivocally, this Michigan team wants to run the football. They want to cram it down your throat, and they'll sacrifice whatever they need to in the pass game. But what I'm curious to see is if they can establish the run, does that open up some lanes for the play action pass to move the ball downfield? And I don't think Alex Orji has to be somebody that's just picking you apart from the pocket. He just has to make sure he doesn't turn it over, make a few plays here or there, and then you can try to extend drives, keep the ball away, work that time of possession, and keep it away from USC's defense. So I think that's probably one benefit, is that they know exactly what they're going to do going into this game, and there's no doubt about what they want to be now.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting aspects about this being Alex Orji's first start is we have seen plenty of Alex Orji over the last few years. He's come in as kind of a change of pace to J.J. McCarthy last year, wasn't very effective doing it. We've seen Michigan use him at times this year as a change of pace with Davis Warren, and then last week he comes in to replace Davis Warren. And nothing we've seen has been very promising, but we haven't really seen Alex Orji give it a chance to play an entire game yet to see if he can get into the flow of a football game, knowing that the offense is designed for him, and he doesn't have to worry about, okay, am I coming out after this snap? When am I coming back in? It's just, all right, you're out there, kid. Let's do it. Let's see what you got. So perhaps having the whole game plan to himself and designed for him will lead to better results, which Michigan needs, because offensively they have been a mess. But there's another side of this game that I do have concerns about. It's Michigan's defense. If you look at what the Wolverines have done this year, they blitz a lot. They did not blitz nearly as much against Texas because history has suggested Quinn Ewers, go ahead, blitz him. He doesn't care. He'll just pick you apart. Steve Sarkisian teams often do that. So Michigan was far more conservative in that aspect against the Longhorns than they were in their games against Fresno and last week against Arkansas State. I expect we will see them blitz heavy again this week against Miller Moss, who has good numbers while pressured, but he hasn't really faced a lot of blitzes. The problem is, as much as Michigan is blitzed, it hasn't been very effective. They come into this game 102nd nationally in pressure rate on quarterbacks and 104th in pressure to blitz ratio. So even when they're bringing guys, they're not getting to the other quarterback. Granted, some of that has to do with Quinn Ewers being Quinn Ewers and getting out of the pocket and making stuff happen. But that'll be interesting to see, because if you look at this USC offense, this is Miller Moss's 4th start. We've been very impressed by what we have seen from him in his first 3, going back to the bowl game against Louisville. But you can also make the argument that he hasn't played a good defense yet. That Louisville defense in the bowl game was missing a few key players. There were a lot of breakdowns in that secondary, and to Miller Moss's credit, he took advantage of all of them. But against LSU, nobody looks at the Tigers as a team with a great defense. Utah State, nobody's going to look at Utah State as a great defense. This Michigan team has NFL players on it at every single level. how will Miller Moss perform against this defense, which is very good, when he's in the big house surrounded by 100,000 people who are going to be making a lot of noise? I would think that if you're USC, you're going to want to rely more on your ground game than you have through the first 2 games of the season. But when you have handed the ball off, USC hasn't been able to run the ball very effectively. So if they can't run the ball in the big house and they have to force, go through the pass, and they allow Michigan to be one-dimensional and start bringing all that extra heat, what's it going to look like? So I think that when you look at these two teams right now, USC is clearly the one you feel better about. But I'm not so sure we should be at the point where we're looking at USC as a team that, oh yeah, be favored by about a touchdown going on the road to face Michigan. So I think there's to be a lot of questions answered about both teams on Saturday.
Well, you've got, it is bananas. We are dealing with, I think, the first time in 30 plus seasons, Michigan has been a home underdog of 5+ points in multiple games. That's like going back to what like Ace Rothstein in the movie Casino when he's like drawing on the chalkboard. Like do we have to go all the way back to Ace to find times where Michigan's had those kinds of scenarios? I'm curious about a Sharon Moore side of this and a pick, obviously, or a lean before we get out of here. But I guess, Tom, I'll throw this to you first. We are dealing with the point in the season where we've got a lot of small sample size, and USC was off last week. They followed up the win against LSU with a 48-0 shutout of Utah State. First shutout win for USC since 2011. But do you buy into USC's defensive improvement? Because I see, only 20+ points allowed across 2 games. You've got less missed tackles. It seems like it's all good, but again, it's really one game against competition anywhere close to what you're going to face with Michigan. Do you think that Trojans defense is at a place where that can be maybe where USC ends up hanging its hat on to try to get a win on Saturday?
I've no doubt in my mind that USC's defense is better than it was the last few years. I think you only need the game against LSU to realize that, because USC's defense was awful the last few years. And against LSU, a very good offense, they made stops. They made tackles. They gave up some big plays, yes, but everybody's going to give up big plays to that LSU defense. Overall, they looked better coached, and they looked more prepared for what they were going up against. And I don't take anything from that Utah State game too seriously, but as far as the question, I don't know if I would consider this defense to be elite or anything by any stretch, and I think we'll have a much better idea of that after this game. But at the same time, if Michigan's offense continues to look as awful as it has through the first few weeks of the season, I don't know how much credit we would really give to USC for it, because if they've struggled to move the ball against Fresno State and they struggled to move the ball against Arkansas State, if they struggle to move the ball against USC, does that really tell us anything about USC?
Yeah, and even like they definitely, USC looked better against LSU. Clearly, the tackling was better, just open field tackling. They were coached up better. They weren't just getting walked all over like they did last year. But they're not going to face an attack like this. And I think this is one where Lincoln Riley has to challenge his defense and say, you know what? We know exactly what we're going to get. And people have challenged your manhood every step of the way since I've been here. There is no question what you're going to face, and you guys have to live up to the challenge. What I don't know is, because it is so unique, are they ready for that challenge? Because LSU had Garrett Nussmeier. They were throwing the ball throughout the air. And when they did run it a little bit when Emory Jones, before he got hurt, they were running it and gashing him a little bit. This will unequivocally be the biggest physical test of the year. Side note, I kind of wish USC didn't have a bye week. I would have liked to see them carry that momentum into this game. It's so early in the season. They had so much mojo going. They got to click this thing back on and get up to speed, and it's coming in a hurry in that atmosphere.
Danny, I'm 100% right with you right there, because you're facing a Michigan team that's kind of the dog backed into the corner, and the only way out is to try to out-muscle and out-physical a USC team. These are two teams that they don't clash a lot, but they are certainly going to fall back to like their most basic principles, and that's what Michigan is hoping. Okay, so what are you expecting? Danny, early lean on this game. It can be the side, the spread, the style, the nature. What do you think ends up happening?
I think it's going to be a fist fight in a phone booth. I think Michigan's going to try to slow the pace down. I think it's lower scoring. I do think this might be a game where Michigan's defense has way more success than they did against Texas.
We were doing our show live on Monday when the Alex Orji news broke, and the very first thing I did was open my phone, go to my app and bet the under, because I look at this game. I think Michigan's offense is going to be running the ball a lot more with Orji even than it already does. And I mentioned earlier, I have questions about this USC offense going on the road for Miller Moss's first real true road start in an environment like this. So I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. I also think it's going to be a close game. It'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, this is a like either you're holding your nose and you're just taking Michigan and hope that they drag USC into the mud, but I have a hard time trusting these Wolverines. I think USC gets the win, but my best bet's probably going to be, as we mentioned, the under 46.5.